Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. I mean, how long has it been since I did this? And you can see I got a different backdrop tonight. Forgive me. I'm trying out my Starlink internet up in the mountains. I have been on the road nonstop since April. I've only spent a few nights at home, and I had to get some mowing done in that big meadow you can see behind me. So I came up, and I'm going to be mowing tonight. And I thought, what a perfect time to try out the Starlink. So if it gets a little wonky, please forgive me, and we'll have some fun. And let me just say hello to a few folks that have jumped in early. Eyeball, Taylor, Newfie Girl, Red Rocket 59. Good to see you back. Hallelujah. Crystal McCormick. I mean, it's just really great to see y'all. And it has been such a long time since I've done lives, as you've well known. Since April, I've been in 4 different countries, and I'm back to my day job, working full time, which is getting me back in an airplane, traveling a lot. But tonight, I'm really pumped up because I asked a special friend to come on and join in this live with me. And I asked her because she's been off the air for quite a while, and doing a few personal things. And now she's back. I saw her first video a few days ago, and I thought I got to make sure everybody knows that she's back. So let me bring in Vanessa from Unmasked. Vanessa, how are you?
Hey, Mike. It's so good to see you and catch up finally.
Yeah, I mean, this is the one night I wish that fireplace was going in the background like it used to go, because when I got up here, it was snowing this afternoon, and
Oh, really?
thankfully the clouds all blew off and the snow melted off. And so, but it's, let me see, it's 48 degrees. So I'm having to
Oh my
bundle up a
God.
little bit, but I thought this would be kind of a fun place. And I hope you don't mind, but we're going to just bust this thing wide open tonight and let people ask questions. And I think you have some mods who have helped out tonight, because I didn't give any of our mods any notice at all. In fact, like most of the things I'm doing lately, it was all at the last minute. But you've been away for a while, but you're back, and you hit the ground running. What's going on?
Yes. I think it's been, oh,
Uh-oh, I'm here.
sorry
If
about that. I mean, honestly, it was literally like whoop, my computer went black. Sorry about that.
I was afraid it was Elon Musk letting me down on, sounds
No, it was
like
the
we're okay.
Okay, I'm glad you're still there. It's like, well, that was uneventful. So yeah, it's been 6 months, I think, since we've been back or since I've been gone. And so I'm kind of trying to make up for lost time. So I'm really excited to be back. I missed it. I missed making videos. This is my passion. So I put out a video last week on, I don't know if you know this case, it's Britney Drexel. She's 17, was in New York, went to Myrtle Beach on spring break, and then vanished. And it's been 13 years since she vanished, and we finally have answers.
So give everybody a sense of what this case is about. And of course, folks, we want you to go over to Unmasked, watch the video, make sure you're subscribing to Vanessa's channel, and get the full story there. But kind of give us the satellite view, and maybe we can throw some questions back and forth on it.
Yeah, so it was in 2009 over spring break, and she snuck to Myrtle Beach. Her mom had said no, she can't go, but she snuck down there anyway. And oops. And then
That was me.
Okay. She snuck down there anyway, which is something that I did that kind of stuff as a teenager. I'm sure a lot of people watching did that stuff as a teenager. Unfortunately, she did that. And then when she got down there, she realized that she wasn't having a good time. And then she vanished, and she was actually texting her boyfriend, and then just the text just abruptly stopped, and no one ever heard from her again. And I mean, her mother left New York and moved down to Myrtle Beach and spent every single day looking for her. A lot of us have been following this for 13 years. It's a crazy case, and there's been a lot of different people questioned and kind of accused of doing it. Actually, it's affected a lot of people's lives, and they just got us answers May, so last month. It's been a long wait.
So who did she go down there to meet?
She went down there with friends, and she lied to her mom and said that she was, going to stay up in New York. And her mom didn't find out that she was down there until she went missing, which is just, the whole case is just awful. I can't imagine what they've gone through. And yeah, she thought her to just learn your daughter's missing and then learn she's not even in the state you think she's in. And then 13 years of a lot of false leads, and then we finally have answers though. So I'm happy for them. They have closure, but also there's a lot of twists and turns in it though. You'll have to see. There's a lot of layers to it.
So, this is an area that always gets those of us who are doing these videos in trouble, or at least it gets me in trouble from time to time because, well, and this is not victim blaming, folks, but it is. You've heard me talk so many times about the victim risk continuum of the things that we do that elevate our risk and that increase our chance of becoming a victim. And so while it's not victim blaming, there has to be some responsibility. Again, this is a juvenile mind that decides to take off with friends. But if she'd have just been following the rules, it could have been an entirely different story, right?
Yeah. And normally you think that, a lot of teenagers make stupid decisions. It's just part of growing up. And normally you get grounded or maybe get in trouble, but the kinds of consequences that she suffered, it's awful. And then on top of that, one of the saddest parts for me is she realized after she went that she shouldn't have gone. She wasn't even having a good time. So the whole thing is just a sad, frustrating case.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, here's a great comment. And I don't know, Laura probably is saying what many of us may have said back in the day.
Mhm.
If my folks didn't let me go, I probably would have snuck out. I guess
Yeah.
the difference is if your parents knew, you could probably still get to go, but there might be some things that put a lot of safety nets in place. And that's the part that I guess is just so hard to get across to
Yeah.
not only kids, but adults is keep somebody informed, keep people in the
Yep.
loop. I don't know. I mean, what were the lessons that you learned from this particular case without giving too much away, because we want people to go watch that video?
Yes. Well, I will say one thing I think it's important, and that's why I do these videos. I've already seen people commenting that they talked to their 15-year-old daughter. I talked to my 15-year-old daughter about it. I said, look, you guys think you're invincible at this age. You're not. This is a good example because everyone thinks that at that age. Nothing's going to happen to me. And this is a great example of, yes, it can happen to you. And I think it's a good teaching tool for your teenager.
Yeah. So, there are questions out there, and I think you can answer these questions. Did they find this girl? What was their closure for family? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I won't give away all of the details because there's a lot involved and it would take us the whole show, but yes, they did finally find her. I don't know, just having kids myself, I don't know how I would have survived 13 years of, being led this way, and some of the stories that are going around were horrific. For her mom to have to visualize of what they had heard happen to her. And the FBI was involved, but yes, there is closure now, I guess, as much as
Yeah.
you can after,
So is this the kind of case that parents could glom onto and use as a mechanism to talk to their kids? Say here's something really interesting that happened, or are we just throwing gasoline on a fire?
I absolutely think so. And I'm one of those people. I know some people say, well, I don't tell my kids. I tell my daughter every type of story like that. Why not? Because if it makes her smarter, and makes her make different decisions, then I think that's important. So I think talking to your kids about this stuff, use it as a lesson, and maybe they'll be in a situation where they, aren't having a good time, or they want to go home and they just go home, or they don't sneak out or do something. But I do think it's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. Well, let's shoot over and look at a couple of comments here. I don't know if there's anything that well, here's an interesting comment. I don't know if she's pointing at me, Leslie. I do like nice weather. But it's awesome to
Well, I like the snow, so what does that say? But yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. Well, and also I've also heard from a lot of people, and don't come for me if you're from there, but I have had a lot of messages saying that it used to be very different back in the day in Myrtle Beach, and it's changed a lot. And so I think that's something that you might get a takeaway from too, that the area is not what it used to be, and you have to be careful down there. That's from locals, not me.
This is interesting though, because I saw that comment, and I agree. Things are a little bit different, but
Mhm.
I guess I grew up in a household that there wasn't much democracy. I mean, we really didn't have voting rights when I was a kid. You reported in, people wanted to know. Now the difference was back then, if you fell down and cut your arm, you just rubbed dirt in it, and if you were gonna go out playing, your only rule was be home after dark or before dark. But
Mhm.
I don't know, how is it really that different, or are kids more sophisticated or more entitled, or are we just giving up as parents and thinking I just don't want to deal with that?
I might not have the most popular opinion. I do think kids are much more entitled now, and I think that they are more sophisticated. I can't keep up with everything that my daughter's doing. I'm and everything's changing, and how they communicate is so different. So I do think that, and it's a struggle to keep up. Thank you. With what they're doing, and you can get Life 360, which I highly recommend to any parent that has a kid. Life 360, but I mean, yeah, I absolutely do. And I don't know, in her case, she was sad, going through a hard time. She went with older kids. It was just a bad situation all the way around.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
folks, weigh in on this. Let's get your opinions on this, and good to see our friend Michelle Morris. If you haven't seen my podcast with Michelle and about her, this is an individual who Vanessa, as a child, had a serial killer read a story book to her, and it is a it is a
Wow.
spellbinding podcast. So make sure you go. And actually, Michelle sent me an email from an airplane this week. She was reading my book, Who Killed King Tut, and it was
Hmm.
one that was given to some delegates during a Senate race. Someone that was running for the Senate wanted to give the book to people, and I guess that person finally got tired of it and sold it online, and she bought the hardbound version, which was the Senate version, which was kind of cool. So Michelle, good to see you there, and kind of
Oh,
fun
that's
to hear that.
very interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Oh yeah, that was a crazy thing. So if you ever are really bored, folks, go to YouTube and look up Who Killed King Tut by the
Yes.
Discovery Channel. And it's actually a film that another profiler and I were hired by the Discovery Channel to go and investigate Tutankhamun's death and determine whether he was murdered or died by natural causes. And we ended up spending months going back and forth to Egypt, and we just had a blast on a project. But we ended up winning an Emmy Award. Can you believe that?
That's incredible.
So,
I
so who killed
absolutely want
King
to read
Tut?
that.
Yeah, and we actually, at the
That
end of the book, we have the arrest affidavit in the back so that we could
Wow.
serve that arrest affidavit on the person we believe murdered him, which I'm giving away that we thought he was murdered. So Anyway,
That is so
enough
cool.
yammering about
I
that.
absolutely will check that out. Yeah, see, even I knew Beth, I knew you'd be all over that. That sounds fascinating.
Well, so
Yeah.
what else has been going on? I mean, anything that as far as the true crime stuff that you're chasing, that you're going to be doing shows on, or that you find really interesting, or that you'd like to talk about tonight?
I did get some questions from a few of my Patreon members for things they wanted me to ask you on some cases, actually. So I thought
Oh,
that would
well,
be kind of
great.
fun.
What are the questions? Let's
Well,
what case are they asking? Are we asking
I
about?
have
Maybe we need to pass.
well, I wrote them down so that I wouldn't forget since I'm so ADD. But I have two cases on Harmony, Montgomery, and Dylan Rounds. Both of them had
Oh
great
man.
questions.
Harmony Montgomery, that one. Folks, if you followed that Harmony Montgomery case, this was the little blonde, thick glasses child
Yeah.
that disappeared about Christmas time of 2019. And some of these cases don't get talked about a lot, but there were some big things that happened with the Harmony Montgomery case this week that are going to be, or last week,
Mhm.
that are going to be kind of interesting. And I'm going to maybe pitch it back to you and say, what do you think about this? Because I'm going to lay out what happened. So
Mhm.
Harmony obviously disappeared. Her father has a history of drug problems and aggravated crimes. It came out in the course of the investigation that there was enough evidence for them to charge him with allegedly physically abusing the child. He was arrested with that. He then also had some gun charges that he was arrested on later. So he's got a batch of baggage that he's dealing with. He's sitting in jail. They call her Harmony's stepmom. Um, she is in trouble because she was involved in some fraud, not only on fraud that had to do with Harmony's disappearance and continuing to collect money, but other fraud cases that she's dealing with. So she's in and out of the court system right now, but she's on bail right now, I believe. And
Mhm.
last week, police went and served a search warrant on the home that Dad, Adam, and Kayla, the stepmom or girlfriend, were living in at the time that Harmony disappeared. And here's the thing that's so intriguing to me and frankly a little bit troubling. Number one, they were snaking and putting cameras and sensors down in the sewer outside of the home. So they obviously are looking for
Mhm.
DNA. But this is almost 2.5 years after the fact. So I can see if you get Harmony's DNA in there that you can circumstantially say, well, the parents were living there at a time, she disappeared at a time, there's DNA in the drain. But that's a pretty big jump to tie that together.
Mhm.
And if you were sitting on a jury, I mean, what would you think about I'm just going to stop at that piece of evidence. What would you think of that?
Well, it's funny. That was actually one of the questions I had because when they're being in the sewer system, does that affect, I mean, that you can use that evidence, I would think, as far as does that present challenges as far as contamination and things like that, especially for 2 years that we're
Yeah,
talking about.
challenges and yet, I mean, circumstantial cases. I mean, that's what they're made up of is
Mhm.
circumstance. And if it was into the main sewer system, then there's a lot of people contributing into that main sewer system. There's multiple
Yeah.
houses and there's of course and I don't even know that once it leaves the apartment, it doesn't go into a pipe that isn't used by 20 other apartments. I don't even know how many apartments were in that building. But the
Mhm.
further it gets from the toilet or the drain, the riskier it becomes as evidence, I guess. But bottom line is, if you could circumstantially say it doesn't matter, it's her DNA and her parents
Mhm.
were living there, and she disappeared sometime around there, then I guess it could become pretty compelling.
Yeah, and it looks like they were consulting with the plumbing company as well, but I thought, and I see your question, Lauren. That was another question. Was so that we all saw them take the refrigerator, the old refrigerator, and replace it and install the new one. And at first, people were saying, well, maybe they're using it to collect, forensic evidence. In your opinion, is that what they were doing with that, or were they just replacing this old refrigerator? Do they think that she was in there or that something was in there? Curious
Well, I
about that.
mean, why would you replace the refrigerator? Number one, if it was your house, it would kind of creep you out today, wouldn't it? If you thought there'd been something in there that was tied to a crime.
I'm weird, but probably yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
And here's why I guess to me this is so significant on the refrigerator is that they had biohazard stickers on the refrigerator as they pulled it out of the house. So that's pretty significant in and of itself. It was wrapped. Again, they could have gone in and swabbed it. So there's something more about that. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that comes out.
I agree. Yeah. And then with Kayla's arrest and stuff, I know a lot of people are wondering, going to see what your opinion is on whether or not maybe she cut a deal, and that's what prompted them to go look there.
Yeah, it very well could be. In fact, that's one of the first things you start thinking about, isn't it? But the other thing is you think, well, maybe it's just tying up loose ends. But then if you listen to what the homeowner in that apartment had to say, the homeowner says, yeah, they took up the floorboards and they took even from the out of the ceiling so they could get to the pipes in the sink above. So again, what were they looking for that was leading them? Because I'll tell you what, it's not easy to get a search warrant, and to get a search warrant 2.5 years after the fact, you got to have something pretty compelling for that judge to say, yeah, let's go for it.
That's what I was thinking too. I don't know what you guys in chat think, but it did seem like they had some new specific information that would lead them, directly there to do what they were doing. So it did seem like maybe someone had snitched on someone else, but you could see what they think.
Now, so here's the smoking gun, in my opinion, and that is that Harmony's mother makes a statement to the press, and I'm wondering where on earth this came from. And, I haven't entirely had goosebumps about Harmony's mom. I mean, she went a long time without reporting that child missing, and there are obviously reports where she said, I sent an email or something. You talk to most parents, and I'd love people to weigh in on here. If your child was missing for a year, would you be making a lot more stink? Maybe like Dylan Round's mom's making right now, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. But she went for quite a while without saying much either. But here's the thing that I thought was so interesting. Did you catch what she said to one of the reporters about what she thinks is going to happen in this case?
No.
It was beautiful. She said, I don't believe that I'll see Harmony again. I think this is more of a recovery effort. And I've been told, and this is her speaking, according to the media report out of Boston, I think it was Channel 25 or something out of Boston, but that big things are going to happen in the coming weeks. So either somebody, and I can't believe police would tip their hand to her or anyone else, but when you're that close to the case, you talk to most moms and dads, they don't know what's going on in a criminal investigation. It's part of the frustration they feel. But somehow she's got some information that caused her to say that. In fact, while you're maybe commenting on that, I'm going to see if I can find that comment and just read the actual comment.
Wow. Yeah, that just lends more towards what I was thinking, that she tipped them off or gave them information, maybe cut a deal, and that's such an odd thing to say, because we do hear that in most cases that the parent, even in the one I was just talking about, Britney Drexel, she didn't hear from investigators for 2 years, I believe it was,
Oh,
or
wow.
longer at parts of it. So yeah, that is a weird thing for her to say.
So
Yeah, exactly.
here's the quote. It's from WCVB Channel 5 in Boston, and Harmony's biological mother says, quote, "This is no longer a rescue mission. It's not a missing person anymore. I know in my heart it's going to switch from a missing persons case to homicide." Now, I know in my heart, I can
Oh,
live with that. It's really awaiting right now. And they didn't say game. So I'm wondering if she said a waiting game right now, but it's really awaiting right now. And then she says, I can't, and then she says, "I was told things are going to get really intense in the next few weeks to come. A lot is going to happen," close quote. So that makes you wonder what on earth is
that
going
is
on there.
very, yeah, I mean, I'm sure people are talking, but for her to say, I'm sure in the next couple, that's a very odd statement at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy. Well, this one will be an interesting one. I suspect.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I just keep going back to how many search warrants I wrote in my career, and how stinking hard they are to get. Uh,
Mhm.
to get a search warrant to go back into that house 24 to 30 months later is a really significant deal to me. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. The poor little
S-
girl. That one's so
Yeah.
sad.
I don't know. Let's see. I hope I didn't miss some comments here, folks. I didn't give the back office any notice, as you well know, Vanessa, on this. So they are not here to pop up questions. But I got to say, I love this comment because it's something I say all the time.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It's a shocking thing to say. That's my guess. I'm gonna stick with that. We'll see. But I think that she gave them information, and now she's, I don't know why she'd be allowed to talk or say that, but yeah.
yeah. Erica's comment, I think, is what most parents would do. Is
Oh,
we'd be making a stink, which kind of leads us into Dylan Rounds. Maybe we could talk about Dylan's
mhm,
case for a minute, because I'm listening to a lot of YouTubers out there really fling some arrows on this one at the
mhm,
sheriff's office. Some might be warranted if they're true. I don't know, but I mean, you know me, I'm always the guy that is holding off and waiting for actual um, legitimate information to come through. But here's a kid
mhm,
who disappears. Actually, in an area when I was on the SWAT team, we used to go out on a regular basis out into the Hoggup mountain range, the Newfoundland mountain range. If you're looking on a map, in fact, I'm going to pull up a map and show you. So here's Salt Lake City, where I live, and
mhm.
this area out here is where this young man has disappeared. And the SWAT team cross, we called it the Lucin Cutoff, and it was actually they put you can kind of see it here in the Great Salt Lake. They put a railroad crossing all the way across the Great Salt Lake, and we'll see if there you can see it as we get in. Oh, you can kind of see it, and then okay, can you see it right there? Right where my cursor
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
So they actually built a railroad causeway across the lake, and we used to get permission, I guess, because we were the police, from Union Pacific Police to get the keys so that we could access and go across. And so you had to time it just perfectly, because you can see it's a really long ways. In fact, let me just show you how far this is. We'll measure this from one point at the highest. It's 20 miles, and so we would we would have to schedule our time knowing that there were no trains coming either direction, because when you're on the causeway, there's only a little tiny dirt road next to the railroad tracks, and those big trains would just knock you off the tracks. But we used to go out to this area all the time, and we would take rappelling gear, and we would go into a bunch of abandoned mines that are out there. We would practice rappelling and rescue recovery and other kinds of things. So it was a great area to go out there. But right here on the map is Lucin, and this young man, everybody keeps saying he was out in Lucin. He was actually east of there, and that little green square there kind of indicates some of the search area. The storyline is that he went to Montello, which is about 30 miles away over here, and had dinner and may have had some interaction with people, and there were police calls out there. But nonetheless, he ends up back home, makes a phone call from home, according to the Elko County Sheriff's, which is the Nevada Sheriff's Office. And they say that Utah has all of his cell phone pings showing that he was making these phone calls actually from his residence, which was this mobile home out in the, and so Montello really kind of disappears out of the picture, and it really goes back to Utah, whereas the last place he's seen when he makes a call to his grandparent or grandmother, and then disappears. And of course, there are all kinds of goofy things, and I'd love to see what people are saying about that in the chat. But what I thought was kind of interesting, I'll try to get back into this real quickly, was that in this area, that some people have said, oh, the cell phone coverage is crummy. Cell phone coverage is really good, actually, out in that area. Now, there are some cell phone companies that maybe don't have as great a signal, but like Verizon and AT&T have really good coverage. These are the only two cell towers out in that area. And so what you do is you kind of, when you think about cell phone data, you think about it more from a standpoint of what's the coverage of that cell tower. And if the tower's really old and not updated, then it's called omnidirectional. So it just shoots in a 360-degree range and says, hey, somewhere in this big area is where that cell was last seen. The newer ones, and I suspect all of those are newer, have what's called cell sectors, or little segments of a pie. And it says, oh no, that person's phone was somewhere within this wedge. And according to video that I've watched of Dylan's mother, who seems to be the most out there talking about the case, it really looks like, and if this press release from Elko County Sheriff is accurate, and I would think that that's got to be one of the more reliable sources, that he was out near his trailer out there, then it puts him on the Utah side, and he disappears. But there are wonky things about that case. I don't know, what were the things that troubled you right off the bat?
This one's a weird one. There's so much. I mean, yeah, that's actually a great question too. The boots are interesting. I mean, in itself, where they were found, the fact that they had dirt. If I'm understanding correctly, they had dirt, not mud, and we know it was raining that day. So I don't know. Would that tell you that he didn't walk anywhere after it started raining?
So, I always, the thing I liked about the detectives that I worked with over my career is we always had someone that took a devil's advocate position. So I think what I'll do is, instead, I'm going to be a devil's advocate to a bunch of stuff that really seems frustrating and hard to swallow. So let's talk about the boots for a minute. So it has, today is a great example here in Utah. It was, when I got up on the mountain, it was 37 degrees and snowing. 2 days ago, it was in the 90s. And so a cold front comes in and things can go really wonky. And by the way, that Michelle, thank you so much. I wanted to make sure I got that up there and didn't miss that. That's really really appreciated. So the boots really trouble me, but I've seen people in these weird climates. I've seen people in the middle of the summer in Alaska when the temperatures just drop from 70 to 50 become hypothermic and do a bunch of goofy things. You see it in the Colorado mountains when people get hypothermic. They do goofy things. Now there's testimony out there, whether it's accurate or not, that there was some blood on the boots. So that's going to become important about whose blood is it, and could it be explained in a number of different ways? I don't know. But the boots alone, if I looked at them alone, I could say, well, all right, they're out a long ways away where nobody would expect them. That makes absolutely no sense. But I don't know anything about Dylan. I don't know if he has problems with alcohol or problems with narcotic abuse, or if he has any problems with mental illness. And I'm by no way, folks, suggesting that. I'm just saying this is where I think we sometimes make mistakes in these investigations, because we say, I'd never leave my boots out there, so there's got to be a serious problem. Could be reasons for it. I don't know. Now, that's the devil advocate. Does the investigator buy that? Nah, that's kind of goofy. This one's goofy.
I think so too. And I think in totality, when you take all of it into account, because you've got the boots and then you've got the truck seat that's moved up too close, and you've got the fact that the truck was
let's stop at the truck seat.
Yes.
Let's stop at the truck seat. That is really intriguing, isn't it?
Yes.
Dylan, according to the Box Elder County Sheriff's missing person report, is 5'10". So clearly for mom to get in that car and say, hey, this is too short for me, there's a serious question there that needs to be resolved. But I always go back to, do you remember BTK, Bind 'em, Torture, Kill, Dennis Rader from Wichita, Kansas? So I profiled that case years and years ago. And Kenny Landwehr, the case agent that handled that case, from the day he was a rookie till the day he retired when they arrested BTK, lived that case. And Kenny and I talked on many, many occasions. And I'll never forget how much time he spent trying to figure out how long the bodies had been in the Otero home because of ice that was melting in an ice tray left on a counter. And what it ended up being was a complete red herring. It actually ended up being an assistant chief on a hot summer day who thought, I'll make me a little glass of ice water or tea or something in the middle of a homicide investigation, and left the ice tray out. So I have to always ask myself, is it possible somebody checking that vehicle scooted the seat forward? Is it possible? Now, having the wheel tilted down, that starts to get a little more wonky. But again, I love to play devil's advocate rather than just jump to a conclusion. And I always think, is it an assistant chief getting an ice cube out?
Well, that's actually interesting perspective, because don't, I guess, go off in the weeds and put too much on one thing. Look at everything in, totality, like I was saying. So I mean, because there's that, but there's also that it was locked, and I guess he didn't normally lock it, right? If I have that wrong, let me know. But I think it was locked, and he normally didn't. There was a gate that was locked. There's just a lot of weird things. And then the power washing of the truck. What did you make of that? I think that's odd too, that the truck was power washed. I mean,
yeah. And how do they know it was power washed versus this? When I was driving up this afternoon, I was thinking of that too, thinking about the devil's advocate. And have you ever had your car just filthy and you drove in a downpour and the thing looked like it had been washed once you got to your location? And they talked about the fact that there'd been a heavy rain out there. I know there had been some heavy rains because we were experiencing them. Now, devil's advocate. So folks, don't think I'm completely wacko and that I've lost my mind, but I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate here of that's great. It's a good sounding story. And those three things that we've talked about together start to become really compelling. And I don't know about the key. Somebody asked about in the chat about, oh, here it is, about the fact that it was in 4-wheel low when it wasn't before. Those kinds of things really say, hey, there's something that's kind of goofy here that caused the pendulum to start to swing the other way from devil's advocate to, oh, maybe this is evidence, red herring versus evidence. So I don't know. I mean, we're putting together cases as citizen detectives, but only the cops have the real information. I think the thing that troubled me was that eventually the vehicle was released and somehow the state of Idaho has taken it into custody, which I don't get what the state of Idaho has to do with anything unless they're thinking something happened in Idaho and ended up in Utah. I'm just kind of baffled by that deal.
There's a couple confusing things. If I understand correctly, the boots, were found, I think it was the 31st. And then on the 6th of June, they're in the trunk of the cop's car still.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if all of that's accurate, then somebody's got some splaining to do, don't they? Because that seems odd. But here's the other thing that's kind of difficult is our Monday morning quarterbacking can really be inappropriate at times when we don't have everything to look at. And I'm going to now be a devil's advocate again for just a second. But in the U.S., every year, 875,000 people disappear. And they are called in as missing persons. Now, according to the Bureau of Justice, 87%-ish will return home during that year, which leaves 104,000 people every year that are never heard from again in the United States. That's bigger than most cities in the United States. And so now you think about these police departments that are getting 875,000 missing person cases every year. They've got to have a system to weight these. But these officers, these deputies, apparently, according to social media, and again, I don't know, I haven't talked to the sheriff out there, showed up right away. They found boots right away. They found things that were inconsistent, that were troubling to them right away. So should that have changed things? We'll let people weigh in on that. Somebody posted here that he had his own power washer. So, that's an interesting thing too. I didn't know that.
There was some weird stuff that came out today, but I really don't know enough to speak on it. I just know it was kind of wacky. It was a call that came out. I'm sure I see some of you talking about it in chat, and I have listened to most of it, but it's a call that came out with a private investigator, but the part I heard sounded very, I guess, far-fetched, put it that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
And that, if I remember right, that private investigator was extricated from the case by the family pretty quickly too. So again, it's so hard to know. I mean, I go back to a case I was helping Adventures with Purpose on. I don't know if you caught this one, but we found Jed Hall in Pocatello, or in Idaho Falls, body. And as I put that case together from a geographic perspective, looking at his cell phone calls and other things, I said, I think he's in the Snake River, and I think he's right here. And I called that private investigator, who berated and talked down to me like I was an idiot. And of course, he's never been a police officer. He's never been a homicide investigator, but apparently he's a pretty good PI, at least according to him. And he said, no, this kid's joined the French Foreign Legion, and he's down in Southern California, or he's overseas somewhere. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. So sometimes we get this thing that we talk about a lot when we're teaching profiling, and that is we try to prescribe before we have ever diagnosed. We try, and once we have made our mind up about something being a certain way, we spend all of our time twisting everything to fit what our theory was, rather than what we're doing tonight of just pulling back and saying, but what if? Is there something that supports that? Or is it just a feeling? And sometimes gut feelings are the things that solve crimes. So I don't want to discount that at all. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting that he was pulled off.
Yeah, me too. Well, where would Dylan fall on the victim continuum then with his lifestyle?
Great question. So let's talk about that victim risk continuum for just a second. So the idea would be that statistically, after looking at thousands of criminal cases, we determined that statistically, people who become victimized that are low risk, and a low risk person would be somebody who, let's say, a stay-at-home mom who plays the piano on Thursday afternoons at the elementary school. On Sunday, she goes to church with her family. Every Saturday, she goes to the grocery store and she picks up groceries. She has a small circle of friends. She would be considered a low risk victim. She's not out at bars meeting unknown people or other kinds of things. So statistically, these low risk people, when they're victimized, are victimized by someone who's known to them. Now, or at least that person knows who they are. So you think of like Elizabeth Smart. She didn't know who this person was, this Mitchell that abducted her. He had been to the home before, but he sure knew who she was through voyeurism and other kinds of things. So there's a connection there in a low risk situation. That's why we always see the spouse being looked at or the parents being looked at when it's a child, because we expect them to fit in this low risk category. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum are, let's say, people that are involved in the sex trade industry or selling narcotics or things like that. They're a high risk victim by virtue of everyone they meet as a stranger. The situations they're in are always in a really bad situation, an uncontrolled situation. And statistically, a high-risk victim will be victimized by someone who's a stranger, and it's usually an opportunistic kind of a thing. And the only thing that we were able to determine when looking at all these cases that made a difference, Vanessa, was three things: situation, circumstance, and environment. And so to paint a picture, let's say that tonight, I would say you're a low risk person. Other than this goofy YouTube stuff you do, you are a low risk person. You have a tight knit group of friends. You keep to your family. But let's say at 10 o'clock tonight, your parents are in Salt Lake City, which is a 10-hour drive from you-ish, somewhere direction. I don't know if that's right or not, but let's just say it is. And your mom says, Vanessa, Dad's had a heart attack. If you want to see him, you got to get here tonight because he's not going to make it through the night. And you say, I'm on my way. And you run out the door and you grab a Diet Dr. Pepper at the local Piggly Wiggly and you start shooting toward Salt Lake City, Utah. It's 10 o'clock at night. The circumstances start to elevate your risk. But you're driving along now through some area where there's no cell phone coverage and you get a flat tire and your risk levels continue to go up. And then along comes some galumping truck driver named Robert Ben Rhodes, who we think killed 300 women when he was out running the roads. And he stumbles across you and says, hey, let me help you out. I'll drive you to the nearest town and we'll get you some help. Man, all of a sudden, you're in a position where you could be a victim of crime. So we think about this young man. He's out in the middle of nowhere. He's living by himself. he's dry farming, and I've seen a lot of people saying, what kind of farming would he be doing? It's called dry farming. I mean, it's they put out wheat, and they grow crops, and they have to use 600 acres instead of 50 acres because it's less fertile ground, and he's having a successful life, but he's there alone, and somebody comes glumping along that dirt road in the middle of the night and sees some opportunity, or somebody that he is a target, I don't know, or he wandered off on his own. I don't know either, but those are the things that kind of go through my mind. And that's why I always think about victim risk. And holy cow, did you plan on me yammering that long about that?
No, I find I'm a nerd. I find that fascinating. The whole victim continuum. I watched that video so many times, as you know, I always tell you that, but I always have that in my head when I'm looking at cases. It is fascinating. And then especially how you can increase your chances by these different decisions that you make.
Yeah. And that's where we get back to that very first thing we talked about with your case that you just released a few days ago, of at what point do we have to accept some ownership of the consequence? No one deserves to be a victim. This is not victim blaming, but we have to accept the consequence, and that's a really troubling thing. Now some people, they just flat out are victims. I just saw a detective's name pop up that I've known for a long time. You've probably seen his name on there. I mean, this is a detective who rescued a child who had been abducted for months. We don't think that that's going to happen, but it does happen, and so we gotta keep in mind that number one, we don't know anything. Just because channel XT News put something on doesn't mean anything, and yet we're going to go build whole YouTube shows over it, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
How do you monitor that, Vanessa? How do you make sure you're not throwing gasoline on this fire of speculation that goes on out there?
I think it's tricky, and I also think it's learned as you go too, but it is a huge responsibility. And we try to not say anything unless we know it's fact. We do speculate, of course, but we make it very known that we are speculating, or like we were just talking about, putting out different scenarios and walking through them, which I think is just human nature. But yeah, we definitely try not to, because like I was just talking about with Britney, the case I did a few days ago, the video, there's actually someone in the video, some of these people, it affected their entire lives. They ruined their businesses, or they had a cloud of suspicion around them, and they were innocent. So it is and it was social media that carried it out, and emotion, and you get mad and, worked, and you want to find someone, and things did line up kind of weird with these people, but they were innocent. And
Yeah,
I thought that was a big lesson too, on not jumping the gun.
I think this is kind of an interesting comment by D. Walker. Women have to remember the risk factors because they're always targeted. Children need to know as well. I don't know how true that is, but I do know this. I've listened to my wife before talk about what she does when she walks out of the mall. And I'm going to ask you, because when I walk out of the mall at 10 o'clock at night and it's dark outside, I'm wondering if Burger King's still open and I can grab a burger to eat on the way home. But women look at this entirely different, and a seasoned cop should look at it differently. But what do you do?
Oh, I agree with D. Walker. I think that you always, unfortunately, in my opinion, part of being a woman is you always have to be on guard. It's just the way it is. And I wasn't always like that, but I remember my dad taught me a lot of stuff when I was younger. And when there were keys, like, he would have me put my keys through my fingers anytime that I walked from the door to the car. I am trained like I always have them through my fingers. Things like that, like looking around. You can buy those flashlights. I have one of them, the body alarms. There's a lot of stuff, but I do routinely carry, still to this day, have my keys like that. And I'm try to be aware and not on my cell phone. That's a bad habit. Sucked into your cell phone. I think that's huge distraction, and it ups your risk factor too when you're not paying attention to your surroundings.
Yeah. I talked to one woman who said she actually FaceTimes her someone in her family, but reverse FaceTime so that it's
Mm.
just showing and she acts like she's talking, but she's just filming as she walks out, which I thought, well,
Mhm.
that's kind of interesting. But yeah,
Great idea.
gosh, it is. It's so important that we consider the risks in all of these. Um,
Mhm.
let me ask you this: did you catch Aiden Fucci appearing in court last week?
I didn't. I was working so hard on my video, I really didn't watch anything.
I mean, it was a short appearance. He goes to trial for the murder of Tristan Bailey, if and everyone
Mhm.
remembers Tristan. But he it was a short hearing. I think he goes in November for trial. But I thought something really kind of interesting that came up. The defense said, "I still have 70 to 80 depositions to get through before the trial." So this is going to be really interesting. And I go back
Um,
to him staring off into space and mumbling to himself, and I just wonder if we're going to see a mental illness
oh,
or something come up. But
yeah, that's what I thought with that last appearance too, like he was trying to set the groundwork, like so many of them do for a crazy, but he certainly wasn't acting like that when they hauled him off. He acted like it was a big joke,
yeah,
when they
yeah,
first.
I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
Well, folks, I've got Vanessa from Unmasked on with us. I want you to, if you have some questions, fire them off. I think you had a few questions still, Vanessa, and we're only going to go a little while longer, but I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that we got through questions. And if you haven't been over to Vanessa's channel Unmasked, please go over there and subscribe. Her newest video, I think you're going to really enjoy. We talked about it tonight. It is so good to have you back in action, Vanessa, and I look forward to doing this again and again.
Yes, me too. Me too. Um, yeah, it is a shame, but we have to be on guard, but I do think we do. See, there's a lot of people that keep their keys in their fingers. I didn't know it was that common. It's a good trick.
Well, and like some people are even saying, listen, even if I'm out watering flowers in my garden, I'm
Mhm.
paying attention, and it's a good lesson for all of us. And
Mhm.
man, I hope the discussion on the victim risk continuum was helpful. You could anybody out there, if you'd like, just look up in my content list playlist victim risk assessment and actually go through that in some detail. And it's a great thing to share with your family members and others who get out and get around. What big cases are you thinking you're going to focus on?
I don't know, I've got another video coming out, this weekend. I hit the ground running. That's all I'm gonna do is try to churn out videos as fast as I can, and, um, there's one case I did wanna ask you about because we're keeping an eye on it. I don't know what's gonna happen. It's relatively new. I just heard about it this weekend, but it's out of California, and it's, Peter McGuire, and what happened was a woman had escaped from a house. Have you heard of that one in Chino Hills, California?
No, I have not.
Oh, we'll have to see, but and I won't get into the details because I probably can't, on public YouTube, but she'd been held captive for 6 months in this home,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it was awful, and she escaped, and I've never seen the charge of mayhem before. They had that charge on there. She was, tortured, all kinds of stuff, and the guy that did it is a 59-year-old private investigator, and it's a nice house, it's a nice neighborhood, And the police put it out there asking the public if there's anyone else that's been a victim of him. So I was going to ask you if you think that means there's possibly other victims, or if this guy's been doing this for a while and she just happened to escape. But
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting to watch. I have no idea, man.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Well, that's good. I'll watch for what you do on that one. Um, how about
Yeah.
um, how about the murder of Tara Grinstead? Did you look into that one at all? I've been doing a lot of stuff on court TV for that.
Oh, I used to follow it. I didn't see. Were you surprised at the verdict?
Well, so I'm gonna play a video later this week or so, I think, where Vinny put me on with 3 defense attorneys, and of course the defense attorneys all think that Ryan Duke is innocent, and
Mhm.
so I was the lone guy out saying there's some things that really trouble me here, like DNA at the scene, and a
Mhm.
confession, and telling his buddy he did it. But that's going to be
Yeah.
an interesting case, because now Bo Dukes, and this was so confusing to me at first. So there's Ryan Dukes, who buddies up with Bo Duke, and together they burn and bury Tara after she's murdered. So it's not a question of the fact that she was murdered, it's which of the 2 did it.
Mhm.
And that thing just keeps getting stranger. So here's a question from Christina, and thanks for this kind donation, Christina. Have you looked into Christy Giles and her friend Heidi, uh, 2 girls who were partying in LA? I don't even know the story.
Are those the models, Christina, that were dropped off at the hospital? Is it that case? Because I remember one like that where they were dropped off non-responsive at the hospital and died. If that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah, let's see if she pops in. There's usually that little bit of a delay. Um,
Yeah,
hmm.
because that one I figured she was probably drugged, if that's the one. But
Okay, then how about the case of Jason Carrolls, who drowns his 3 children just to hurt his ex, or his soon to be ex-wife?
I haven't dug that deep into that one. Um, and I also struggle with the kid cases. I can't explain it, but there's certain cases that are more difficult for me. The kid cases bother me a lot. I did Harmonies just because I don't know, I got sucked into it, but I struggle with the child ones.
Yeah, they are tough.
Mhm.
Out of my entire career, there are only a couple of cases that um, I sometimes dream about. One is of a little boy named Ian
Mhm.
Wing, who was 7 weeks old when he died, had 13 rib fractures, and his brain had been detached through that Contra coup shaking episode, and it went through 3 different police departments trying to solve the case. I was at the time running an unsolved murder task force for the attorney general, and ended up profiling the case and figured out who I believe murdered the boy, and got a confession from that person of murdering him. But I still keep a picture of Ian Wing in my office. So it's crazy the
Oh,
things that we do and the impact they have on them. But the thing that I always got out of it is I never have nightmares about it. I just remember Ian Wing, and it's for a police officer, you're the only advocate or voice that child has, and so you take an entirely different look at these kinds of cases. But
yeah, I can't imagine how you guys do what you do. I mean, it's hard enough to dig into them and report on them, but yeah, being there and having to deal with all of that, yeah,
well, the
I don't
hard
know
thing
how
for
you guys.
police officers, I think the most difficult thing is if they don't disengage from who they are when they're doing
Mhm.
police work, because every one of those cases is something you can relate to. If it's an elder abuse, you have parents or grandparents. If it's a child, you have children usually, or other things like that. So you have to, you kind of figure out early on that their problem isn't your problem, but you are fortunate enough to be the advocate for them. And by heck, those people that hurt them need to be held accountable. So anyway, enough of my little soapbox.
No, I love hearing your stories. As you know, I could just sit here and listen to them.
Well, we'll spare everyone from that. So, folks, you have 1 minute left to start putting your questions in. I'm going to actually give you 3 or 4 minutes because it takes a second for them to make it through. But Vanessa, any messaging you'd like to leave with everybody as we wrap this up?
Just basically that I know we've been gone for 6 months, but we're back and doing what we love, and we're going to have a bunch more cases we're going to dig into, more content, and I hope that they'll check it out and
awesome,
come back and at least watch the one we talked about at the beginning. Britney's is a fascinating case, and then the one that is coming out this weekend is one that John Douglas was involved in, and I love John Douglas.
Which case was that? Oh, you can't tell me yet.
It's a surprise. Well, it's one I actually saw a recent interview with him in 2022 where he still called this killer the most sadistic he's ever dealt with, which I thought was a powerful statement coming from John Douglas. So it's going to be a good one too. Well,
that's interesting. Well, folks, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I just looked, I'm 7 subscribers short of 109,000 subscribers. So please make sure you're subscribing to Profiling Evil too, and make sure you go over and subscribe to Vanessa's channel, and we'll get back on again. I think this was a lot of fun tonight, and I got a shout out to New Level Auto. Thank you so much. That all of that does help, and we have the new series of the Academy series starting in a week or 2 behind. Oh, somebody's asking if there's a horse behind me. There might be a moose or something.
That was my job. I was supposed to tell him if something came up behind him. I didn't see anything. I had one job.
We have moose, elk, and deer that wander into the pond at night. So who knows what it might be, or it could be the neighbor who, I don't know. It's a long hike for the neighbor to come in.
I didn't see anything.
Well, thanks, Vanessa. And from all of us at Profiling Evil, folks, thanks so much for supporting us. We really do appreciate it. And we'll catch you all on the next show.
Yes. Thank you so much.